Okay, so welcome to another Joy of the Rediscovered album. So this episode, the year's 1997, and the album is 1 Second by Paradise Lost. There's a lot to talk about in this episode. On lots of different levels, this was a real pivotal year for me. And as I talk around this, I'll start off with the music side, then we'll talk a little bit about what was going on career-wise and studies-wise, and then back to the music again. I think that's the best way to do it. You can't hear it, but in the background I've also got this album playing. It's been a real pleasure and a joy to revisit this album. Super cool album. If you've never checked out Paradise Lost, well worth. And a lot of their albums are obviously heavier than this. This was when they were veering towards a more electronic direction, which actually took a little bit further on subsequent albums, but then they veered back again. And there's a couple of other bands I want to talk about on the same record label that, who did the whole exploring genres and subgenres as well. But we'll get onto them in a moment. So was released on the 14th of July 1997, and I picked it up basically when it came out. Now, what's been interesting is listening back to it in the process of doing these episodes. What you will notice is I'm now releasing ahead of the episode one of those albums that take me back episodes. So by the time you see this video, I will have already uploaded on the Sunday before this goes out that albums that take me back to 1997, which is, I don't do any talking in it. It's just a slideshow that goes through albums that I remember, listened to, were on in the background, either stuff I bought or stuff friends were playing or was on the radio from that year. So in doing that, it sort of made me aware of something I'd not really thought through, which is when I listened to this album, the first time I listened to it, I could really hear Sisters of Mercy influence in it. And that was my main sort of touch point with the band, because I hadn't listened to any Paradise Lost prior to that. So I wasn't aware of their back catalogue. So when I re-listened to some albums from 97, I actually listened to Ultra by Depeche Mode. And although I was aware of the singles off of that, I wasn't aware of the whole album. And it's interesting when I listened to that and then re-listened to this, I can see how, so what was happening was Paradise Lost, we were going from Death Doom through a sort of bringing a bit more of a sort of classic rock. There was also gothic rock elements in their music, gothic metal, into more synth pop. And then Depeche Mode around this time had moved from being, albeit a dark synth pop band, who I was big into prior to this in the 80s when they went through their all sort of Black Celebration era, all around there. And they were getting more rocky. There was more sort of guitar sounds. I mean, the main songwriter in the band at that point did play guitar anyway. A lot of people weren't aware of that. He was a guitarist. And so, riffs were creeping into Depeche Mode. So it was interesting when I went through this and listened back to both albums going, oh yeah, I can really hear now a Depeche Mode influence creeping into Paradise Lost, or vice versa. Paradise Lost influence creeping into Depeche Mode. I'm just not sure, because both albums came out the same year. So yeah, that was the thing for me. Now, first thing with them is they were on the Peaceville label alongside a whole load of other bands, which I think came to be known as were the Peaceville 3, which we'll get onto who the Peaceville 3 is in a moment. But there was this sort of roster of bands that they were grouped in with on the label at the time. The other thing is they'd sort of made a reputation for themselves, carving out a gothic metal sound, sort of going from doom death to gothic metal, to sounds where the vocalist didn't sound that far away from what James Hetfield had been doing in terms of his voice, the sound of his voice, as around the time of the Black Album. So there was definitely that sort of move to a slightly more, I don't know if mainstream's the right word, but that sounds. But a lot of bands were and subsequently cited Paradise Lost as an influence on their music, particularly that evolution of the gothic metal sound from Death Doom. And of course they're not the only bands that were on that same timeline around that time. There's a number of bands you could argue were in a parallel development from outside the UK, from places like Northern Europe. So yeah, I mentioned Peaceville Records. They were on Peaceville Records back around that time. I'm trying to think now, did it come up and say they were? Yeah, so by now they're on Music for Nations. Yeah, they're on Music for Nations, but I was aware of them being on Peaceville alongside Dark Throne, Catatonia, Autopsy, Anathema, Paradise Lost and Opeth. Now, interesting for me is I listened to possibly Catatonia before I listened to Paradise Lost or any other one of these bands. I'm just trying to think who, like on this roster, who was the first. It was actually My Dying Bride when I think about it, because that was as a result of a list in Terrorizer. So yeah, so I got Paradise Lost. First album came out in 1990. This is the first album I bought by them, and then I backfilled quite considerably. I started buying up a lot of their stuff on CD from this point backwards. Then, funnily enough, didn't follow them much after that. Subsequently, I've listened to later albums, but immediately after, I didn't pursue them. I pursued another band on the roster, which is My Dying Bride. So I got into them around about here, like Gods of the Sun. So early 97, it was the first album that I bought off of a Terrorizer end of year list for 96. It's like Gods of the Sun. Funny enough, and there's a connection here, it was the first, I bought the album when I was doing my very first exam for my postgrad in computer and manufacturing. And I remember going over to Crawley, buying the album before I had to go and sit my exam, which was in the afternoon. So with them, once I'd listened to them, and then in 97 when I picked up on Paradise Lost, one second, I also in parallel started infilling My Dying Bride back catalogue, but then also carried on through up to 2004, kept up with them. Anathema, first album by them, I bought by them, wasn't until Judgment in 1999. I was aware of this album, but when I bought their album in 1999, did some backfilling at that point. If we look at some similar artists on Last FM, you can sort of see the usual, if you're familiar with the genres like death doom, melodic metal, gothic metal coming up. Usual Suspect. Which I think I've been listening to a lot over the years. I suppose Swallow the Sun, Catatonia, bit of Amorphous. Didn't really listen to Sentence until about a couple of years ago, and rather regretted that I hadn't checked them out sooner, actually. But you can only listen to so much music. So, yeah, end of the year 97 for Kerrang! They actually don't feature on any end of year albums. But when you look through this, there's other albums around that time that I recognise, some that I bought either in 97 or 98. So definitely that album, Prodigy album, this one, that one, Acrimony, Tamuli Shumaroom. But I've just brought this one up to talk to, if you like, but I wasn't buying Kerrang! At that point. I stopped buying it. I was actually buying Terrorizer. So I'd bought the issue of Terrorizer which had the 96 list in it, and at the end of the start of 97, which is when it came out, I'd started buying stuff from this list and proceeded to attempt to buy every CD on this list over the course of about 10 years, just tracking it down, because we're in an era, I'm just trying to think when Amazon became a thing, but I know initially I had to buy these albums, by going up to London or down near to where I was working, or when I was travelling around the country, which we'll get onto in a moment. But I was trying to find here, there was the, where's it gone? There is, like Gods of the Sun. So yeah, that was the first album I think I bought off this list. That, and then I think followed by October Rust. And when I look at when 1 Second came out and look what was being released either side, it gives me an idea of what I'd bought in sort of real time to this. So I go back to the month before, to June, and we've got the Seahorses Do It Yourself. So I remember having that. And so this I was pivoting as well. In this period I was pivoting from cassette to CD. So yeah, from this period, definitely buying cassettes to play in the car. And then I remember this. I had a friend who was big into Megadeth, so I remember listening to that album. And then really when we get back into the month where it was released, I started listening to any Opeth yet. It wasn't really till the following album. But then I remember this coming out but not buying it till a little bit later. But yeah, bought this when it came out. The album we're talking about. This, yeah, it's one of my favourite albums, but I didn't listen to this until well into the 2000s. Remember buying this when it came out, Adam and Eve, Catherine Wheel. The track Broken Nose was playing a lot on the radio. Oh yeah, this, a live album from Pantera. And you got things like Godspeed, You Black Emperor. I had a friend who was big into that, that's how I knew them. So yeah, a lot of interesting stuff being released, either side, either August or the previous month, June, either side of July. So now to talk a little bit about what I was doing at that point. So it's interesting because I just changed jobs. As much as I really, really loved where I worked, the pay wasn't great. I was in the middle of doing my postgrad as well, and so I had sort of aspirations to do programming at that point. I was working in a helpline. I had been doing some programming at the firm, as on the strength of the courses that I was doing. I started getting involved in doing prototyping in databases for projects that they wanted to do. So I'd been dabbling in that. I've been doing a bit of VB programming, Visual Basic programming, as a consequence of working in Access, and bits of stuff in, I'm trying to think of the other, DBase, I think, because I just was doing a course in database design as part of my postgrad, having done some sort of project management stuff and some quality control stuff. So I was sticking that, and so I decided that I wanted to, have a try at getting a programming job, and I was successful. I ended up getting this job down in Eastbourne, working for a value-added reseller, doing modifications on accounts programs. And it was useful because it was a 4GL language, so I had a lot of familiarity through using VB in as a the programming language in combination with Access. So yeah, I was definitely up for that. As I thought at the time, things turned out differently. So I did that for 18 months, but in that 18 months it felt like 5 years of work. It was really hard. Plus what you have to bear in mind is I was doing that. I was still studying for my postgrad in parallel in the evenings and weekends, and whilst I was out on the road, because all of our clients when I worked in Eastbourne were scattered around the country, mainly the south of England, but up as far as for me sort of Milton Keynes. But the courses that we had to go on, the IBM sanctioned courses for the product, which was marketed by IBM but produced by a company in, I think, Denmark, was up in Coventry, actually on the campus area for the University of Warwick. So I'm working down here. I'm going, I suppose at that point, what was probably once a month, maybe, because they were really pushing me through the accreditation, the firm I worked for, going up to Coventry for like a week, and then actually living in Forest Row. So I had to commute down to Eastbourne every day, and then once a month I went up to Coventry to learn more stuff. So I was doing these accreditations. So I was on the road a lot, doing my assignments on my laptop, and so it was a pretty hectic time at that point. And the reason as well I bring this up is because during that time, this album, 1 Second by Parasolize Lost, was more sort of my soundtrack to that period. So I remember driving around with that playing super loud whilst I was driving up and down various motorways between Coventry and Eastbourne. And also, and this was a little bit later, I think maybe more into 98, when by then I think I'd finished doing all my studies, at least in terms of the accounting packages. I was still finishing my postgrad because I was sort of I didn't finish that until I think late-ish 98. Yeah. And sometime then, it was probably, mid to late 98 when I finally finished it. But I also had to go down to visit a client in Wales, the Brecon Beacons. So yeah, lots of travel, lots of living out of hotels, lots of doing college work in my spare time and studying the programming. So it's pretty hectic. So after 18 months, I just knocked it on the head. It was just too much. And plus the stuff we was doing was just ridiculous. Like the level of difficulty on the projects, the firm bizarrely had positioned themselves to take on jobs that other people had messed up. And so we were dealing with accounting systems that were already, I wouldn't say quite trash, but some of them were getting pretty close. It was good for our kudos, but wow, it took a lot of cognitive ability in programming to fix the brokenness of some of the systems. So yeah, I really, after 18 months, packed it in. But saying that, all of that stuff I did then set me up to be able to go self-employed. And initially I did some work contracting out to them, doing training. I said I wouldn't do any more programming as a contractor, but I would do training. So I went out and trained clients on the systems for them for about the first year, I think, on and off, and plus training their staff. It was good while I got up to speed with my own business, doing troubleshooting training on Windows systems, and also teaching at a local college. So back to also placing it on a musical, popular culture timeline, because this is something that reminded me of it. So I think I left my old job sometime in June, July, and went straight into this new job, straight up to Coventry within the first few weeks. Because I remember it being blisteringly hot, and I would get back from the course to the hotel, which had no air conditioning, and I just run the bath with cold water and sit on the edge of the bath with my feet in the cold water to cool off. It was that hot. It's a really hot summer. And then August, we had the tragic death of Diana, Princess of Wales, and this really sticks in my mind for two reasons. One is I woke up that morning and I'd had the radio on overnight, and they were playing back-to-back music, which is normally a bad sign on the UK radio. It means that someone has probably died of, pretty important person. And it turned out, Princess of Wales had died as a result of this car accident. And that day, it also sticks in my mind because it was the day I was going up to do another week up in Coventry, starting on the Monday. So what I did is I set out on Sunday afternoon. I think I first found out about it on Sunday morning, and then driving up to Coventry, and we'd also been out as a family just before I did that to go shopping somewhere as well. I think I had to get some stuff for my trip up to Coventry, so I took my parents and my brother out to somewhere, and we went shopping for a little while I was getting some stuff for my trip. And I spent the afternoon sort of driving up to Coventry there, and then spent another week there on a course, probably whatever it was called, VAR 2 or whatever. There was VAR 1, VAR 2, and then VAR 3 was the exam. And each course was a week, and you got deeper into the programming. And under normal circumstances, because I spoke to the assessor there, he said, what's supposed to happen is you're supposed to do the courses, and then you're supposed to spend 6 months to a year practicing what you've learned. But the firm just wanted to slam me through the course as quickly as possible. So I did levels 1 to 3 in, hardly any time at all, over the course of probably 4 months maybe. So that it reminds me of that time. There's a lot going on. I remember sitting up in a hotel in Brecon when I was visiting a client and watching earlier episodes of South Park. So that must have been a little bit later on in the year, maybe the following year. because I remember still doing studies in things like the SQL backend into Christmas time, and that would have been before we took on the job in Brecon. So yeah, but that's around the time when South Park first started. So British music, what else was going on? We had the Spice Girls. They had, I think, their second album that year out. Lots of like A-sides, Backstreet Boys. There was that Puff Daddy and Faith Evans on Be Missing You. It's a tribute to Notorious B.I.G. There was a Notorious B.I.G. album out that year, actually. Prodigy were out. Candle in the Wind was big as a result of being used around the commemorations of attributed to Diana, Princess of Wales. So I was just going to have a quick look at the number one singles and number one albums. Actually, more than number one albums than anything. So yeah, White on Blondes. A lot of these, I just remember buying them when they came out. There's Ultra by Depeche Mode. Yeah, OK Computer by Radiohead. I'm planning on sometime in the future doing a music episode, just talking about Radiohead, actually. Yep. Fat of the Land has been in our Oasis. Urban Hymns by The Verve. I remember that, travelling up to my courses in Coventry and them playing The Drugs Don't Work. Oh yeah, there's your best selling. Oh, Barbie Girl. Yeah, one of the programmers, they had the course that we were on, they had like a main tutor, but there were programmers on site to assist you, because you could phone in there and get programming advice, and they were all at the same, in this same, I suppose campus is the wrong word. It was basically a what would you call it? It was on there's an industrial estate that's on the in the same place as the Warwick University campus, and it was a building there which housed the training rooms and the office there for the programmers. And one of the programmers there that we used to chat to kept on about this Barbie Girl single. It was like his favourite single. And of course, yeah, the Natty and Brudio album came out, Torn. So I remember that. Teletubbies. Yeah. All Saints Never Ever. Wow. Yeah, this certainly was playing on the radio if I ever had the radio on, driving around. And of course, this is the whole of 97. So some of this I would have heard when I was working at Radio Rentals, before I went to work for this programming, doing programming and accounting. And there I think I've said in other music episodes, we had the radio on. So, got Angels by Robbie Williams, I remember. Say What You Want by Texas. Oh yeah, here we go. First, second album by Sheryl Crow. Okay. Yeah, wow. I remember this. That was another one I played a lot when I was driving around. I remember it being popular with students at the time. Yeah, there's the Natalie Imbruglia one. Left and Middle. Oh, there's Jagged Little Pill. It's still kicking around. Came out in 95. Yeah, I remember those singles being played a lot when I was working at Radio Rentals from, 4 years. It was from 93 through to, 93 to 97, 4 years. Wow. So what else have we got? That we've already looked at, really. So, yeah, like I like to do in these episodes, I'm going to take a bit of a slice through album of the year, just to see. So, yeah, probably the different genres I was mainly listening to. So, from looking at it through metal album release set lens, I just really got seriously back into extreme music as a result of picking up that Terrorizer copy, which had the previous year's, the 96 end of year list on it. So I was becoming more aware of stuff again. I remember buying this in 97, that is, and this a bit later. Oh yeah, Temple of the Morning Star, Void Phobos. Oh yeah, there's a lot of them here. Yeah, so oh yeah, Sigh How. I don't think that's actually on Spotify. Oh, and this Enslaved album. I bought that a little whiles later. Sometime must have been 88 or 99. Someone bought me my first gift voucher on Amazon, and I didn't have an Amazon account, so I set up an Amazon account, bought that, and I bought Dillinger Escape Plan EP. Yeah, Tamula's Humour Room. So yeah, that's pretty familiar. What about rock releases? Yeah, I used to play this a lot when I was meeting up with a mate of mine I used to work with at Radio Rentals. He left before me, but we still used to hang out, and I'd meet up with him, and we'd listen to music and write music. It was cool. Yeah, I remember this coming out, Spiritualized. Yeah, wasn't really into Metallica in that phase. Like Blur, wow. This I listened to recently. I didn't realise quite how drum and bass this was, actually. Yeah. There's Depeche Mode. Verse Siegel Ross album. Very ambient. That one. Oh, punk. So we're going to get a bit of doubling up there. I'm not sure what... I didn't get into AFI until around the time of... Was it Black Sails on the Sunset? So a lot of the stuff here... No, I wasn't really keeping up with punk stuff. Probably I knew about this and this, and I'd seen this album. Blink 182 didn't really hit my radar until a little bit later. Synth pop, yeah, Ultra, yeah, nothing else really there. I'm not sure what that one is. It might just be a dead connection. That's open album releases overall. So everything. So anything here that I have strong memories of, beyond the ones I've already pointed out, because they'll also appear. I mean, I didn't really check out him until 3 albums in. So, yeah, so around the time of, was it Love Metal? Same with Sarah McLachlan, not till the 2000s. Just seeing if there's anything else here. It's funny, I'm not seeing Anthems for the Welkin at Dusk, which is odd, because that came out in 97. Yeah, Within Temptation. Probably didn't check them out until several years later, but I do have that album, my backfield on them. Gorgoroth Under the Sign of Hell. Not sure even if that's on... That might be on Spotify. Wow, Mew had an album out there. Crikey, I didn't know about them until my wife introduced me to them a lot later. This was a cool album. this Chicane album. Really enjoyed the tracks off of that. And I think this Napalm Death album may have... I wonder if that's got Breathe to Breathe on it, I'm not sure. Wow, that brings back some memories. One thing I was just going to double check while I'm going through here is, see if I can find it again. No, it's not going to. I was curious, sometimes with these British music, they'll sometimes talk about specific genres, but I think that's more like when they do the summary for the whole decade. So, yeah, I don't see that. Okay, what have we got film-wise that brings back memories? Darklands, I don't remember that specifically. So I remember that a lot of these I didn't watch when they came out of the cinema. It was more later on TV. Fifth Element, Full Monty, G.I. Jane, yeah. Nil by Mouth, I don't think I've seen that. It's a pretty harrowing film. It's got Ray Winston and Kathy Burke in it. I understand it's really good, but it's pretty grim. Oh, Spice World. Funny. And then just a quick look at what was on in BBC. Let's look, I always like to look at the debuts here. I'm trying to remember if 97 was when they started showing Buffy on the TV or not. I think it was probably the following year. Maybe. I don't remember any of this. The trouble is I was just working so much and studying so much. I don't know how much of this stuff I watched. Yeah, I remember Full Circle. That I do remember. But I don't have much memory of these debuts. I remember this. And I do remember Teletubbies because of the single. Wow. Oh, Midsummer Murders. Wow, yeah, most of this I just don't remember. I remember, oh yeah, Brass Eye. I keep meaning to check this out. Oh, Harry Hill. This I do remember, King of the Hill. I think this always used to be on just as I was getting home from work, actually. Yeah, it used to take me about an hour to drive from Eastbourne up to where I was living in Forest Row. Yeah, pretty much. This is a super busy road. A22. It seemed like it took an hour. I'm not sure whether that's accurate. Let's just see. Directions. See, now I'm curious. No, that's not right. What am I doing now? That's Nutley. Forest Road to explore. 47 minutes. Okay, yeah, 47 minutes. But the reason why I bring this up again, this was really, I don't know if that, well, it's a really busy road. It's parts of it are dual carriageway. Parts of it is just super fast for the size of the road. And because it's dual carriageway, you used to get people like double overtaking stuff, just stupid stuff. And quite a lot of times I'd be coming back in the evening, and that's what made me think of watching stuff in the evening, and there'd be a major accident and it would take like ages to get home. Just trying to work out, like, ways of getting round stuff was always fun if there was ever a major accident somewhere. But yeah, it just made me think of that when I said, getting home from work. So there we have it. I hope you enjoyed that sort of reminiscing on and around 1 Second by Paradise Lost. Thanks once again for watching and listening. Bye for now, and I will catch you in a future episode.